I'm DJ Harrell. I'm Director of Development Services here at City of Fort Worth. I just wanted to get us kicked off. Lori Lewis will be joining us to give us instructions on the rest of the day. However, I wanted to take an opportunity to welcome you guys to the City of Fort Worth. One of the things that we pride ourselves on in the City of Fort Worth is to facilitate development as as our city continues to grow. We're adding about 20,000 people on average a year, right? And so one of the things that our city manager and our council has been big on is making sure that we foster that growth, and we also support orderly development as we do it. So again, I'd like to welcome you guys. I want you to know that we're going to continue this series. We're doing this in order to continue to partner with our development community. I know that at times we think about bureaucracy and we think about it's us against them, or big bad developers, right? That's not the way we see it here at the City of Fort Worth. We see it as a partnership. We can't do what we do without you all, and vice versa. So again, welcome. And before I take my seat, I would like to take one moment to recognize a celebrity in the room. So a previous planning and development director is with us today. Her name is Susan Allen-East. Thank you, Susan, for attending, and welcome back to City Hall. All right, again, I'm going to turn it over to Lori. Thank you guys for attending.
All right, good afternoon, guys. Welcome. We're so happy that you're here. This is a big event for us, and so happy to see this turnout. It's really nice. Thanks. Okay, I'm Lori Lewis. I work in development services. I manage the facilitation team. And I want to take a moment to give you an introduction about today's workshop and kind of set the framework of what we're going to cover today. So this is our fourth workshop. We've been doing this about 3 years, and our commitment is to offer the workshop 4 times a year. So this is our first one, 3 more to go by the end of December. So we'll definitely be in touch with you guys on those topics and the timeline. So why do we do this? What's the importance of these workshops? It is important to the city that the development community has the resources and the knowledge needed to move through our development process. And so that's important, right? You have timelines, you have funding. It's important that you get through the process efficiently. And that's why we do these workshops. Like I said, this is the 4th one. We do have a site on our website where you can look at the videos and presentations from our previous workshops. The other thing I wanted to touch on is this gives you an opportunity to connect with our subject matter experts. So you're going to meet those folks today, and it kind of gives you a face to a name, and then who you can reach out to as you start your process. All right, so let me set the stage. This slide here gives you a very high-level overview of our development process. So the topics we're going to hit on today kind of fall in the middle section of our process. So today we're going to touch on platting in the process, platting and annexation, our infrastructure program. So we have IPRC, but we also have a new program, fairly new, the Small Scale Infrastructure Program. So you're going to learn about that program today. Then we'll finish up with contracts. So what contracts are needed for the scope of your development project? And we're going to walk through that and give you more information. So that's what we're focusing on today. I'll introduce to you who we are. There you go. I might have went too far. Who will be presenting today? So we'll kick off with our planning and annexation manager, that is Derek Hull. We'll move on to our engineering manager, Drew Goodman. Then we'll take a 5-minute break and hear from our small scale infrastructure program. That is Jenna Henderson, our program manager, Evelyn Roberts, our contract services administrator, and then our graduate engineer, Alex Brazilla. And then we'll finish up with our manager of contract management, which is Candace Merrick. Okay, one more slide. So as I stated, we're going to do these workshops 4 times a year for the next couple of years. You know, we're into process improvements, so we want to know what's working for you guys and what's not working. So I appreciate it. I have QR codes posted throughout the room. If you could complete the survey, it's very quick, just what's working, what's not. And then what topics do you want us to cover in our future workshops? What would you like to hear about? Because that can help us plan. Okay, I think that's it. So I am going to introduce Derek Hall from Platting and Annexation.
Thank you, Lori, and good afternoon. Thank you, DJ. As Lori indicated, my name is Derek Hall, and I've been with the city for about 8-9 months. And it's been a great experience. And what's been great about it is to join the city and to understand its subdivision ordinance, to work with our staff, to understand the desires of the development community, to work hand in hand with our legal department. They're very much involved with how we interpret the subdivision ordinance and how we look at your plat request as well as your annexation request. So we're going to get through a couple of slides. I say couple and just because there are probably several slides, but we will make this entertaining as we go through. So the presentation content includes just a general introduction of platting and annexation. And then we'll specifically go through the plat overview, the annexation overview, and then we'll open the floor up for any questions you may have as it relates to either platting or annexation. So let me first start off by saying, how about you meet the team? As Lori indicated, I'm the planning manager for both platting and annexation, but we have 7 individuals that comprise of our platting and annexation section, which is a part, just one section of probably 8 or 9 different sections to development services. But we try to meet your needs as it relates to any and every one of your requests related to planning and annexation. So our team is comprised of senior planners, planner 2s, which are our entry-level planner positions, and then planning assistants. And together, along with the other sections within our department, we really do carry out a robust understanding of what you are requesting as applicants to meet your needs. So in terms of a platting overview, think of a plat as a map of a specific land area, such as a subdivision or a parcel, showing the locations and boundaries of individual lots of land subdivided with streets, alleys, easements, and of course it's drawn to scale. But in essence, when we're looking to approve a plat, we look at it based upon it creating a legal lot of record to secure a building permit. And that's going to be critical if you're looking at doing any type of construction here in the city of Fort Worth. Our building division will ask, or those that are processing permits will ask, has your land been platted before? And if your general question is no or maybe, we will ask for evidence that you have had a platted piece of property. If it has not been platted, then you will stop your permit seeking activities and then go through the platting process. Assigns legal descriptions, dedicates public open spaces, establish easements, and allows for connection of utilities. So this is what we're generally trying to achieve when we look through our plat process. So generally, we need a plat because, as I mentioned, in the city of Fort Worth, we will not allow you to construct without having a plat on record. So if you're looking at pulling a permit, you need to make sure that you have a plat in place. And this is going to be critical as, we don't want to hold up, we don't want to stall any type of development project, but we certainly want to make sure that you meet the minimum requirements as outlined in our subdivision ordinance. So what types of plats might the city consider? So we have generally this kind of very large concept plan, as we call it. It is a plat type, or it's a we consider it under the auspices of a plat, but it really is a concept plan where you have at least 680 acres or about 1 square mile, and indicating the different types of land uses, your major thoroughfares, and oftentimes we use this in the form of a preliminary plat. So preliminarily, what are you looking at trying to achieve, and how might you be trying to achieve it before it goes to a more further and refined level with the final plat? But again, a minimum of 1 square mile or a minimum of 680 acres. Most plats we receive are final shorts, which are for 4 lots or less. So these maybe we may receive applications for this type of plat no more than 10 times a year, if that at max. The preliminary plat is 5 lots or more typically, where you're looking at subdividing, and there may be some additional phasing that's involved, and dedicating new public and private streets as a part of your platting process. All preliminary plats represent the first stage of the platting process. All preliminary plats are required to go through a final plat process, whereby your final plat should substantially conform to what your preliminary plat has highlighted. Final short or minor plat or replat are typically for 4 lots or less. And generally, these types of plats will have no dedication of right-of-way necessary for access associated with the preliminary approved plat. So most of the cases that we see are for these 4 lots or less. We have individual property owners that have plats that are or can be subdivided. And so maybe they want to subdivide to build a house for a family member, or maybe their neighbor, or maybe someone that they know would like to build a house next to their property. If they meet the minimum development standards within a zoning district, and it will allow for the plat to be subdivided further than, let's say, a lot into 2 lots, then they can apply for a final short plat to subdivide a lot into 2 lots or a series of lots, assume that it doesn't go beyond 4. These are our most common plats that we process. And then there are these different types of plats, the amended plat and the conveyance plat. The amended plat is a plat that generally does not change its overall property boundaries, but maybe within a platted area, there is a movement of lot lines. So as long as you're not changing the general property boundaries and the previous, there's been a previous plat has been submitted, you can apply for an amended plat. Typically and generally, these are approved administratively. The conveyance plat, and for those of you who are developers, we're trying to encourage this as a means of financing. Maybe you haven't decided exactly what are going to be your end users, who might be your end users, but the conveyance plat is a type of plat that can be used to establish your financing. These can be recorded, however, you cannot pull building permits on a conveyance plat. So you will still need to go through a final plat process. But in terms of for financing, you might find it easy just to go through this process, use it as a financing mechanism, but then have the individual, or later in your process, you might decide, you will decide that in order to move forward on it, you'll go through the final plat process to ensure that you can now record the plat as a final plat, and then to start with the building process. And then the final plat must be based upon and consistent with the layout of the approved preliminary plat. So for 5 lots or more, where you're looking at having a major development type of project, and you've gone through, you've received comments from the varying divisions and sections within development services, within other city departments, and we have all agreed that you've met the conditions and the requirements of the preliminary plat, then we take you through a final plat process, And generally, as I mentioned before, if it conforms to the preliminary plat, it's a fairly easy process. You've done all the hard work doing the preliminary plat process. And so this generally is comparing what is in the final plat with what's available or what is in against the preliminary plat. There are several regulations that we use to kind of govern how we review plats in the city of Fort Worth. House Bill 3167, the 30-day shot clock, is obviously one of the more critical ones. But also our subdivision ordinance really speaks to and gives us governance in terms of how we review plats. We do look at the zoning ordinance. The subdivision ordinance will oftentimes defer to the underlying zoning district in terms of conformity and to make sure. And so we look at that as a means of giving us some guidance in terms of what we are allowed to do and if a plat can be approved based upon the zoning district for which it's located. And then our individual sections within development services and then outside of the department that are responsible for plat review have their own codes and manuals that are adopted. And they're oftentimes referenced in the subdivision ordinance. These include fire code, other design manuals for some of the other sections, and then some form-based code districts. But these provide further guidance in terms of what we look for as it relates to reviewing a plat. So what's required as it relates to our plat, and how do you submit a plat? We have some basic requirements: completed application. We also have an accompanying a seller application, letter of authorization of the property owner. This is critical. So whenever you're submitting an application, if you are not the property owner, you need to make sure that you get the consent of the property owner. And then a checklist. And this helps us to know that you've looked at the checklist and you're providing us with exhibits, an application that describes, what is going to comply with the subdivision ordinance. Fees are also required. A plat exhibit, so making sure that you have submitted a plat exhibit. These are the critical elements that what we look for to deem your application complete. And then once it's complete, we carry you through the process. Now, as it relates to the review, once an application has been deemed complete, the Development Review Committee, which is comprised of sections and Development Services Department, as well as other city departments that are looking at the impact of your proposed plat. We generally have 30 days to review the plat and make comments. We like to consider this kind of in two phases. So within the first 15 days, we will have reached out back to the applicant to let the applicant know a consolidated list of conditions that we have compiled from all of the reviewing sections and the departments. It's at that time we then have you as the applicant or your representative to address all of those comments and resubmit based upon the conditions and the comments that we include. Typically at that 15-day level, we issue what we call a conditionally approved letter. And that is conditionally approved subject to you addressing all of the comments and the conditions as outlined that the planning staff will submit to you around that 15-day mark. And or if there are some deviations to the subdivision ordinance. Deviations are a fancy word for waivers. So if there are some requirements that don't meet the intent of the subdivision ordinance, then we may have you to request a waiver to the City Plan Commission, and then the planning staff will present that information, and then it will be heard at a public hearing. If there are no waivers to the subdivision ordinance, then we can administratively approve your plat, assuming you address all the comments as identified. Otherwise, any type of deviation, any type of waiver request will have to go to the City Plan Commission for consideration. Once the revisions are provided by the consultant, the applicant, your representative, DRC members will typically have 1 week to review and update their comments and workflows accordingly. So what we typically do is we'll respond, and then we'll put the onus on the applicant to address all of the consolidated comments. And that's the critical part. So when we give you comments back, it is now incumbent upon you, it's up to you as the applicant to address all of the comments. Let us know when those comments have been addressed. And then we return all of those amended exhibits, comments, or questions that you may have back to the reviewing development review committee members so that we can see that our issues have been addressed. If everything has been addressed, then you get an approval. As my famous city attorney likes to say, the shot clock starts all over again. But it starts at the point to where all of the comments have been addressed, and it's time now for the staff to review any changes that were made to the exhibit. Once all comments and conditions are met, the plat is then eligible for approval. So it's a fairly simple concept, but what we pride ourselves on, and DJ has been a champion in making sure that as we go through this process, that collectively the reviewing sections and the departments are meeting regularly to talk about any of the plats, any of the questions that exist, and to make sure that we're providing a timely response so that you, the applicant, can go back and address those issues. So after the approval process, then we go into recordation. And again, we pride ourselves on offering 2 types of recordations. We can record your plats either electronically, where the city allows or the county allows for electronic recordations, or we can do them manually. And in doing so manually, our staff will take the plat and record it on your behalf and then let you know when the plat has been recorded. So all recorded plats in the city limits or within the city jurisdiction for permitting will be sent to the fire department for the issuance of addresses. So after your plat has been recorded, there is one final step in order for you to get your addresses. And that final step is our platting team coordinates with the fire department that will ultimately do the addressing for the subdivisions, the properties that you have now had recorded. And then just as a matter of process, we require an AutoCAD file for all recorded plats. And those are provided to our GIS team so that we can update the city layer and the associated approved addresses. So that's kind of procedurally, but those are some of the things that we kind of include. And so that therein lies your entire platting process from start to finish, from submission of an application all the way to recordation. But there are some other functions of the platting team that we will probably just spend a little bit of time talking about. If you have things that are being proposed where they involve the master thoroughfare plan, which is a plan that's championed through our Transportation and Public Works Department, and there are required amendments or waivers based upon maybe a project that you have where there may have to be an amendment or a waiver. We will process that, and that goes to the City Plan Commission for review before going finally to City Council for final consideration. IPRC, you'll hear a little bit about that later on, is also a process that we are involved with as it relates to our platting team. Street and alley vacations, these things right now are kind of common, particularly with certain development projects. Those are processed through the platting team. They are reviewed at the CPC, the City Plan Commission, before going to final consideration by City Council. And then plat verification letters are something that we do internally. But if you have a question about if a plat exists on your property, we can issue you a plat verification letter. So now as we transition on from platting, we find ourselves in the world of annexation. By show of hands, how many of you either live in the city of Fort Worth or maybe have a business here in the city of Fort Worth? Okay, great. And you probably have seen over the last 2 decades in particular how our city has continued to grow, expand. So probably prior to about 3 years ago, or maybe 4 years ago, maybe 5 years ago, the city of Dallas was probably as large as the city of Fort Worth in land. So now the city of Fort Worth is now larger than the city of Dallas in terms of its land area. We're approximately 361 square miles. And unlike the city of Dallas, we have approximately 250 square miles, albeit there's no change at the legislative level, and we can continue to do our annexation. We have the potential to grow even larger than what we are today. So I thought it was critical to also kind of, in the vein of talking about platting, because most of our annexations will end up in a lot of platting activities. If you're in an area where we're rapidly annexing or is being rapidly annexed, then I think it's worth noting, having a little bit of conversation on it. So by and large, the city has an annexation policy. Purposes are to promote the orderly growth and development by facilitating long-range planning for the provisions of municipal service. This goes hand in hand with our comprehensive plan that is championed through our Fort Worth Lab Department, but to also apply appropriate regulations, standards, and codes. Making sure that those land use regulations and development standards are there to encourage and to see and to anticipate the growth that's coming today and tomorrow. And finally, to diversify our economic base by creating new job opportunities by annexing properties, particularly that have a commercial or industrial factor to them, critical to what we're looking for here at the city. So as a part of this, we coordinate with our capital improvement plan, comprehensive plan updates, and our platting and zoning processes. So just out of a sheer notion, we touch approximately 43 other cities and jurisdictions within our ETJ boundaries. So a lot of cities we touch in some way, form, or fashion, and this kind of suggests and show just how we have continued to grow over the decades. But it also requires coordination with other multiple agencies, and these are typically regional, state agencies, agencies like TxDOT, TRWD, Trinity Metro, and our COG for North Texas. Several legislative acts have gotten us to where we are today. I was joking but not joking about some of the legislation that's currently being decided right now in Austin. And so there's currently some legislation that's talking about what happens in the extraterritorial jurisdiction. So this is the area that is not currently city incorporated, but is within 5 miles of our corporated boundaries, unincorporated areas, excluding other incorporated municipalities and their ETJs in which the city has the authority to annex. The city may annex property only within its ETJ area, unless the city owns the area. Some places in Houston, some places in Texas, thinking about Houston, because they're infamous for us, but they may own areas that are not contiguous to their city boundaries. And so that's where that last bullet, you may annex property only within its ETJ unless the city owns area. So you might own property outside of what is in your corporate city limits. So this illustration kind of shows you the city of Fort Worth is located actually in 5 counties. I'm not sure how many of you all knew this, but obviously the majority of the city is located in Tarrant County, but we have a portion that's in Denton, Wise, Parker, and Johnson County. And so if you're going through a platting activity in one of these locations, your recordation may not occur in Tarrant County, but in one of the other 4 counties that we are located in. There are also additional activities that are considered at the annexation level. We have a number of development agreements with which property owners may extend city control through a pre-annexation agreement, utility agreement, LPA, local planning authority, things of that nature. And then we'll talk a little bit about our annexation criteria. So the area under consideration for owner-initiated annexations must be contiguous to Fort Worth city limits and satisfy one or more of the following criteria: an enclave, an urban development, a growth center, are some of the more critical types of annexations and the criteria that we look at and that we consider. The area under control for owner annexations must be contiguous to Fort Worth city limits and meet one or more of the following conditions. So an enclave is defined as an area within the city's extraterritorial jurisdiction that is surrounded by the corporate limits of the city of Fort Worth and or corporate limits and or extraterritorial jurisdictions of the other municipalities. So we see this often where a piece of property is surrounded on all sides by the city of Fort Worth. And so this is one of our criteria for what we look at. Urban development is an area that meets all of the 3 of the following conditions. The city is aware of or anticipates development activity of an urban nature. The city is able to provide adequate municipal services. So we've determined that we can provide services in a particular area. We may have some new water and sewer lines that are generally in the area. And so we've made that determination. The city has determined that through an appropriate analysis of prospective revenues and expenditures as described in Section 5, and this correlates to a fiscal impact analysis, which we'll touch on later. So in terms of the city kind of considering an annexation project, our partner department, Fort Worth Lab, conducts what we call a fiscal impact analysis. And generally, this is a comparison of the general fund revenues that may result from the development of a particular project versus the general fund expenditures. So what are the costs and what are the revenues that will be generated if this annexation moves forward? So this is a part of the determination that will go whenever we take an annexation to City Council. If I didn't say that, it's probably worth noting, any proposed annexation, particularly those that are owner initiated, must go before City Council for their consideration. There is a very in-depth process that we do internally where we look and we analyze the proposed impacts, and then we write that up in a staff report. We work with our legal team to make sure that we have codified everything in an ordinance and the necessary agreements, and then we present that in a public hearing to the City Council for their consideration. And it's all predicated on having a financial impact analysis to look at the pros and cons of annexing a particular area into a particular within the city of Fort Worth. As I wrap up, I'll talk a little bit about the service plan. So the levels of service talks about the capital improvement program and the elements of the capital projects necessary to provide full municipal services. And this is critical because as we're looking at annexing different areas into our city, part of what we have to look at is what types of services and what will be the level of services for those new residents, those new business owners that will be coming into the community. Are we going to meet the expectations of these new homeowners, these new business operators? Will we meet their expectations? And so we run a simulation to determine what the level of service will be for emergency services, fire and police services, our general water sewer services. Those things are analyzed as a part of this process in our service plan. And then as we wrap up, municipal service agreements. are critical. These are written agreements prepared by the city prior to full purpose annexation, which lists each city service on the effective date. So if you're looking at annexing property into the city, we will ultimately have a list of the effective dates on when each of these services will come into play. And then as it relates to our planned service areas, this 20-year planned service areas may choose to extend infrastructure and/or services within 20 years or more and does not obligate the city to annex. So in essence, we understand that things are coming down the pipe, but it doesn't put, the city is not on the hook necessarily to provide or to annex within these 20 years as development is occurring in and around the area. So I think that concludes my presentation. Before we bring on our next speaker, I wanted to open the floor up to see if there were any questions. Those explanations were so great that there will be no questions, right? I'm sure someone has questions. Mary. Yes. Okay. Yes. We have a plat application in general to provide an overview of what you're asking for as an applicant. It helps us to understand in this wide universe of contractors, surveying companies, engineering companies, no two companies do plat exhibits alike. So in order to provide some strict instruction in terms of what we need, what we are asking for at a minimum basis, it's critical that we have some written instructions out and to simply say, how many lots are you subdividing? What is your acreage size? But then more specifically, we need to get the signatures of the property owner. And so we'll have people to fill that out. And then when they fill out their seller profile, they update that application. So it's kind of 2 for 1, if you will. And I'm glad you asked that question, Mary. Right now, we're looking to streamline that process, whereby we have it all integrated in our Acela, and you will, in the future, be able to just fill out one application. And we're looking at taking digital signatures. But for now, we have the paper copy that's typically uploaded to Acela, and then we have the Acela profile that you fill out. Yes.
Okay, so mine's a little bit inside baseball, so it may not be the right form of the question. So I work with a lot of developers, and something I'm seeing more and more frequently is that some of my developers are choosing to basically, instead of coming in for an administrative plat, they'll do declarations to separate their lots off of. They'll come in, final plat it, and then do declarations to actually separate the lots. What is the city's appetite for that, and do we need to bring it through as a lot change, or can we bring those declarations in, and that constitutes creating those lot lines?
Yes. Couple of questions there, a couple of responses. By and large, if it's 4 lots of less and it's not going to require any additional infrastructure, then you're probably fine. If it gets to be more preliminary, like 5 lots or more, where there's going to have to be a review of the current infrastructure, the assessment of the infrastructure, along with the other types of services, water, sewer, things of that nature, you will probably not be able to just do a declarant and then move forward. It'll have to go through a series of reviews, preliminary plat first, and then go through the final plat process.
Thank you so much.
Sure. Any other questions? Any burning questions? Anyone want to talk about the current legislation? City attorney just left the room, so we'll probably hold that off for next time. But there are several legislative acts that are going on that will affect platting and annexation. And like you, we're just watching to see kind of what happens. So, well, thank you all.
All right, guys. Thank you, Derek. So I failed to mention that we are recording this workshop, and I will be sending out the PowerPoint tomorrow so that you have it. And then once the video is ready, I'll send that out to you as well. So I see a lot of note taking, and I'm like, oh, I forgot to mention that. So you will get the information via email. All right. So now we are going to hear from Drew Goodman, our engineering manager.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to wait patiently for my slide. Where's the, oh, thank you. Just kidding, I'm in charge. All right, so again, my name is Drew Goodman. I'm the engineering manager for our Infrastructure Plan Review Center, also known as IPRC. So before I kind of jump into my slides here, I want to raise your hand for people that know what IPRC is. Okay, pretty good amount. That's good. Y'all been paying attention. I appreciate it. So for those that don't know what IPRC is, we are the process for developers to go through to get public infrastructure as part of their project. So that includes a community facilities agreement, and essentially we work with you from planning all the way through construction. So within the city, there's a few choices right now of infrastructure as part of a developer project, public infrastructure. So there's ordinance taps and miscellaneous projects. Both of those are through the water department, and I believe will be a discussion point for a later Development 101. We have our small scale infrastructure program, which y'all will hear from after the break. And then within my group, we have IPR standard process and our express CFA process. So our standard process, as of a year ago, we call legacy. The reason that I'm putting standard process is there's nothing more confusing than calling a new process legacy. So we had House Bill previous. We still do have a few projects that are under our House Bill, but we're going to mainly focus on our legacy process. So going into the submission requirements, all legacy projects go through a pre-submittal. And what's part of that pre-submittal is our public civil construction plan sets, our detailed checklist, and our application fee. And you can see there's a few items within the plan set that needs to be provided. One is a final plat or a plat that is accepted for review. So this doesn't mean that you submit your final plat and you're ready to come in for that pre-submittal. It means that platting needs to accept it for review. And once that happens, you can come in for pre-submittal. The other thing is these are preliminary, so preliminary stamps are completely fine for pre-submittal. You do not need to have your approved studies. It's great if you do, but you don't need them for your pre-submittal. Same with your alignment walk. You don't need your alignment walk to come in for pre-submittal. So our first reviews happen after the pre-submittal, and again, we'll kind of go over timelines when we get past this, but you'll need those civil construction plans. You'll need a response file to your pre-submittal, so making sure that you've responded to all of the comments provided to you for your pre-submittal. Study and alignment walks. So you're going to need approved studies and alignment walks to come into your first review. The one exception we have is our drainage study. So a drainage study needs to be submitted 7 days prior to your first review. Other applicable documents, so that's going to be your geotechs, off-site construction plans, variances, and letters of no objection. So, geotech reports, we need to know what's under there. We need to make sure that subgrades, pavement, all of that is meeting the conditions of the project. Off-site construction, so if you have a sewer line, water, paving that's outside of your platted boundary, we need to see that within the plan sets. Variances, so should you need a variance from one of our design criteria, there's a process for those submissions that's provided depending on which group that you're submitting that to, whether that's water, sewer, paving, drainage. And then letter of no objections. So this is typically from our utility friends. So essentially you're crossing their easement. We need permission to cross their easement. And then you can see you'll have your application fees here. So it's going to be $435.37, which is a very nice round number, per design sheet. So this is not including our general notes, our details, anything like that. These are project-specific plan sets that we're going to review as part of that design review. And then compliance reviews, very similar to what we saw in that first review, right? So we have those construction plans, but our goal with the legacy process was to get in and out on one compliance. So we understand that during first review, there still may be a drainage study out. There may still be some questions that need to happen, but when you come in for compliance, we really want to get these projects wrapped up and approved in that R1. And so part of that means we need to have fully sealed and signed plan sets. So preliminary is okay for our pre-submittals, preliminary is fine for our first review. By our compliance, those have to be professional engineers sealed and signed. And that includes the civil engineer, landscape architect, non-city standard sheets and detail sheets. There's specific language that can be applied there or they can be signed. On top of that, we're going to make sure that all studies have been approved. So that includes our drainage study, but that also includes if you had a study that you needed to go back and revise, if during discussions you've increased your lots or you had to move something or connect to a different pressure plane, any kind of revisions to studies has to be done prior to coming into compliance. You're going to need your comment response file, whether that's from your first review or previous compliance. We'll need to make sure that we have that. Same other applicable documents that we've seen before. And then your plan review fee. This is only for additional pages. So you're not getting charged each time you come in for compliance for pages. This is just if you added a bunch of pages, we need to make sure that that gets invoiced. The final components for compliance review, because again, we're trying to expedite these reviews, make sure that we're doing comprehensive reviews. So as part of our compliance review, we've actually added draft project manuals, our location map, CFA exhibits applicable to the project, quantity takeoff matrix, and easements by separate instruments. So that means any easements that are not going to be by plat. All of those items need to be provided on your compliance review. We're going to be reviewing it as comprehensive because that allows us to move straight from this to our CFA exhibit review with the executed bid proposal and then get y'all to CFA. So going over the standard process time, so pre-submittals are 8 business days. Submittals are due by 12 p.m. every Tuesday. A technical review is done the same day, and comments to the applicant will be provided by the project manager no later than 2 p.m. the following Tuesday. So it's going to be from Tuesday to Tuesday is our review period. That afternoon, the project manager will make sure that any comments are provided to you. And then we'll have a pre-submittal conference, which is held on Thursdays 1 to 5. When you come in for your pre-submittal application, you will be given the choice if you want to have an in-person conference or if you want a virtual conference. Just one thing to note here is all in-person conferences are scheduled between 1 and 3. Virtuals are 3 to 5. And then our first reviews are submitted by 5 p.m. every Monday. So you can come in on any Monday by 5 p.m. Comments to the applicant will be provided at 1 p.m. the 10th business days, and decision letters will also go out that day. So for compliance review 1, so this is the first compliance review that comes in. We're going to have, the PM's going to do a technical review when it comes in, which is a 24-hour period, and those submittals are accepted any day, any time. That being said, I applaud anybody that works on holidays or weekends or 12 midnight. We're not going to review those until the next business day that pops up. So you'll have 24 hours and they will either accept or reject. If they reject, they're going to have an email that's sent to you with the items that need to be corrected. Once those items are corrected, you can resubmit for your compliance. If you do it in one day, you're good to go. There's no timelines as far as how long in between getting that rejection and the next submission. Comments to the applicant are going to be provided on the 10th business day. So this first review is a 10 business day review. The reason we have that is because we're not only reviewing the plans, We're reviewing all of those additional items that we talked about, the CFA exhibits, the draft project manuals. We want to make sure everything's comprehensive and can be approved together. On the 10th business day, the comments will be provided, and then approval or disapproval letters will go out on the 10th business day. Or if the comments are minor, if the PM believes that the consulting engineer can get those corrections done, we have built in a 5 business day option period. So that allows 5 business days for the PM, plan review team members, our PRT members, and the consulting engineer to work together, get any last remaining things resolved, and still get approval in one round. When we look at reviews 2, 3, continual on that one, hopefully we're not looking at too many of these, but they do happen. You can see it's going to be exactly the same as what we saw in the first round. The only difference is now we do a 5 business day review period. So the PM has had time to review the plans, has reviewed all of the documents. At this point, we should just be firming up those final details. So each compliance after the first is only 5 business days. So, and then looking at the process for post-plan approval, timelines and submission. So cover sheet review and sign. So cover sheets, once the plans have been approved, are going to be submitted via SELA. The PM is going to sign, I'm going to sign, and we'll get that back to you within 2 business days. Our next step is that CFA preparation package out. So we're going to be looking at the final CFA exhibit, so they have to be resubmitted to us, because a lot of times we may have some minor changes that happen from the plan approval. We want to make sure that those exhibits are correct, as well as an executed bid proposal with the contract signature. Working days must match the inspection fee worksheet. So what happens is our working days that are provided, that's what's used for our inspection fees. And there are some cases where coming into a compliance, we have a certain amount of working days. The projects go out to bid, they get a contractor, and that contractor has a different set of working days. The PM needs to know if that changes so that we can get those fees corrected. Whether they're higher or lower, we need to make sure they're corrected. After that, so that's going to be 2 business days as well. CFA execution, so this is going to go through our contract management group. This is when you're going to be paying your financial guarantees, working through the execution of your community facilities agreement. On typical point, those are 5 business days. And again, all of these days are the time on the city. And then leading into our final kind of items here, so our electronic documentation package, this is getting everything ready for construction. So we're going to have those final plan sets that have been approved. These plans need to match the ones that are approved. If we need changes, we can do those as a change order, but we have to match the plans that were approved because that's what's under the CFA. You're going to have your final project manual. That's going to have all your signs, bonds, your signed agreements, your times, your pre-qualified engineers, all of that, our contractors, all of that's going to be included there. Your bid proposal tool, executed easements and agreements. So again, if we had easements by separate instruments, we need to have those executed before we go to construction. That way we can actually work within those easements. Testing firm selection form. So you're going to choose one of our 9 material testing firms that you're going to utilize for the project. Pre-con attendance list. Construction permit acceptance. So this is something our stormwater group looks in. So they're going to make sure that you have your grading permits, applicable floodplain development permit, anything like that if you're working in a floodplain. And then we'll also be checking to make sure that SWIPs have been provided to the city. So just making sure that a copy was submitted to the city for construction. Once that's all done and approved, we move to construction package out. You do not have to do anything on this one. This is us making sure that we set up the con record, make sure all the funding's been taken care of, and everything is ready for our inspectors. Once that's done, the pre-con will be held within 7 business days of that being accepted. And just kind of a note here, a pre-con meeting cannot be set up until the above steps have been completed. I know we all want to get to construction. I want to get to construction as well, but we have to meet all of these so that when we get there, everything is set and ready for us to be successful. So with that in mind, I'm going to move over to our Express CFA project. So Express CFA is a process that was developed a few years ago now. And it was for smaller projects that were coming in that really we could shorten the review periods and try to get these in and out. It was a way to work with our miscellaneous group to make sure that they had kind of a higher workload. We were going to move some of those over to us to kind of help and make sure everybody can, move forward. So eligibility for Express generally relies on 800 feet or less of street and alley paving, water and sewer infrastructure, landscaping, and street lights. There also can be minor stormwater infrastructure that's going to be on a case-by-case basis, no city participation, and no major encroachment. Now, the reason I say generally here is there are going to be times that you may meet all of this, but they're still not an appropriate project for Express. If it's in a TxDOT right-of-way, if you have a railroad crossing that's going to take a long time to kind of build out and work out there, if you're in or near a FEMA floodway, all of those things are going to increase the time that you're going to have reviews and therefore are just not appropriate for this smaller process. There we go. So to come in, you'll need an eligibility meeting. So every Express project will start with an eligibility meeting. And to do that, you're going to complete both the Express CFA forms, which are in Appendix A of our submittal checklist for Express CFA, which I'll talk about a little bit later, and return back to our office. It is important to select a project name and be consistent on all forms, studies, and construction plans. It is also very important when these projects come in through the application, they have Express CFA in the name. Confirm you will have a pre-qualified contractor on board. It's really important when these projects are coming in that a pre-qualified contractor has already been in discussions. That is something we see is the longest lag time, especially for small projects, is getting contractor on board. Provide us with a full set of preliminary public improvements construction plans. Private improvements may be included, but they are for reference. Again, IPRC is looking at public infrastructure components of a development. Provide proof of approved studies and water and sewer alignment. So coming into this one, what's different, again, we are going to be looking at full approval of any kind of studies that are required. A lot of times these projects don't even need studies because they're so small. So we need to make sure that any studies that are required have been taken care of. And finally, you'll schedule a meeting to go over everything that's been submitted and see if the project is eligible. So as you can see, first and compliance reviews are not broken out. And the reason for that is they're exactly the same. So when they come in, you're going to come in with those express eligibility forms, construction plans. They need to be signed and sealed. There's no preliminary when you go through express. Study approval numbers are required. So if there are studies, we need that study number. If it's not applicable, we need an NA. Draft project manual, bid items, descriptions, numbers of working days are exhibits, easements, quantity takeoff, variances, loanos, and you'll be able to submit by noon any Tuesday for these. So if you look at this, Express really looks like one of our compliance reviews, right? It's really skipping over that pre-submittal, skipping over that first review, and getting you straight into a compliance. So going over the timeline, eligibility, so you're going to set up that eligibility meeting by emailing Sandeep Adhikari and Talisha Taylor. So Sandeep is our project manager who oversees our Express CFA process. And then Talisha Taylor is our coordinator. I bet many people in this room have worked with her many times. So meetings are going to be first come, first serve, and are scheduled as time allows. So once you submit everything that you need for the eligibility meeting, they're going to find the first available time that they have and get you on the books to look at that. And then just a note here, eligibility meetings are required prior to first review application. So if you submit your first review and you haven't done your eligibility, you're going to get kicked out to start back. One thing I want to note here is IPRC is currently working on an Express CFA application. So in the meantime, when you do come in for that first submission, you are using our standard process, our legacy process. We are hoping to roll out our Express coming this June. So that will allow you to not only have a fully working workload that's going to go through your eligibility so you know where everything is, but also is going to create the IPRC record. So you'll know that its Express is going to be a completely different type of record. First, reviews and compliances, so 10 business days, submit it by 12 p.m. every Tuesday. So every Tuesday you can come in, but by 12 p.m. Technical reviews are done the same day. Comments to the applicant are provided by the project manager no later than 2 p.m. the following Tuesday. So it sounds very similar to our pre-submittal, right? The big difference here is response files from applicant are due to Acela no later than 10 a.m. the following Thursday. So you're going to get comments Tuesday, 2 p.m. You have till Thursday, 10 a.m. to review, respond, and revise your sheets. And the reason for that is the Express CFA meetings that happen on Thursdays are not for comment review like the pre-submittal is. They are for us to get you approval. We're going to go through each one of those comments, make sure it's been addressed, and we're going to give you the green light. That's what we want to do. So again, Express meetings are held 1 to 5. You will notice that is the exact same time as our pre-submittal meetings. So in a lot of cases, these are only going to be the PM that are going to be in there, or applicable PRT members if we need someone to come in with their expertise. But they are all held virtually. And then if we look at our Express CFA post-plan approval and timelines, these are all exactly the same as the standard process, the same timeframes, the same submittals. So where Express really shines is those review times. And again, having things like TxDOT or a lot of stormwater, all of that increases our review time and essentially puts you would have been on a better path through our standard process than our Express. You're not going to save any time. So I've got all of this listed again so everybody has it when you're reviewing everything, but I'm not going to go over it again. So let's look at the time comparison. So House Bill 3167, that's the one that we had previous. So that used to be 68 city days. Again, this is time within city reviews. Legacy, we have 8 days for the pre-submittal. Total time with the first review acceptance is 35. What we typically see is a first compliance review, and that's 52 days. So we still had a lot of savings when we went from House Bill to Legacy. If we look at Express, our total city time is 24 city days with the first review. What we typically see is 1 compliance, and that's still 32 city days. So again, smaller projects, much more confined review times, and we get you in and out very quickly. So the last thing I wanted to touch base on is the development community was sent out a memo back in March for developer time pause requests. So this is talking about once the project's in construction, how can time be paused? I think most people that have done a project through Fort Worth understands that once time has started in construction, working days are counted for all applicable days. This is excluding our non-worked weekends and our weather days. So going back to that inspection fee, that's based on the working days. Every day that is considered a working day, we're charging that fee. So there are certain situations that commercial and industrial projects may request a one-time pause in working days. Pause times is not allowed for residential projects. This is only commercial and industrial projects. And to do that, there is a form on our infrastructure page to apply for a pause time. The items that need to be covered for that to be evaluated is going to be all traffic control devices associated with the CFA need to be removed from the right-of-way. If required, a separate TCP permit may be required from the contractor. So essentially moving the permit over to the contractor, and they are required to be keeping up the maintenance if any kind of traffic control is still required. All SWIP BEP devices need to be removed from the right-of-way. And all line items for water, sewer, storm drain, and paving, excluding parkway line items, have been constructed and inspected in the right-of-way. That's the other condition. So typically what we're going to see is items here where the private project may not have been as far along as the public. And if the public infrastructure was built, the private construction may damage those entrances, those landscape, sidewalks, things like that. So this is a method for the projects to essentially pause that time, let the private construction get ahead, and then we can resume and actually build in those parkway components that may have been damaged if we had done it before. So for contact information, this is our general email. You are more than welcome to email us about any questions that you may have. This goes to me as well as our coordinator and our tech too. And then I do want to point y'all all to our infrastructure page. So what I have highlighted here is our legacy submission checklist and our express submission checklist. So those are two things that came out this month that kind of walk you through the steps for each one of our process. I do have paper copies over here for anybody that would like those, but they are also available here. You can also see on this website, we do have all of our different submission calendars. So if you get confused about all the great different processes going on right now, there are calendars for each. If you ever have any questions, again, feel free to email us. We are happy to answer those. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Two quick ones. First, can you just clarify, we are currently, new projects are considered legacy, yes?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. And then one of the steps for IPRC plan submittal is that we have an approved final plat in for review, but a final plat cannot be approved until we have approved IPRC plans. Can you help me understand the reason that we have to submit a final plat knowing it will change through the IPRC plan review process?
So the reason that we moved forward with a final plat submission is in a lot of cases under House Bill, we were using preliminary plats, which were deemed horizontal control plans, to really move forward our infrastructure. And in many cases, what we found was because this was preliminary, it was a constant changing landscape because the developer was still working out how many lots they wanted, what they were going to build in this area. And so we were seeing these changes happen while we were reviewing. And that's what was causing R5s, R6, R7s. The original legacy process, which happened before House Bill was originally developed back in the day, utilized the final plat. And we knew from that time that having a final plat to review, even though it wasn't recorded and was going to change, there was a better idea of what that project was going to be. And so it reduced the amount of review times we had. It also reduced the amount that the preliminary and the final plat had to be updated.
So those could be submitted at the same time?
So currently, they can't be submitted at the same time, and the reason for that is platting is still under our House Bill 3167, which is known as the shot clock. So essentially, if they were submitted at the same time and that final plat was not set for review, it could be deemed through legislation as a review of the plat, which is not what we want.
Drew, just for clarifications, we are charging $435.37 for one detail sheet, right?
That is correct.
Just a quick question on the standard legacy IPRC process. At what point should the CFA application be made?
So, and that's a great question. So the CFA application can be submitted anytime after the first review. So with the first review and after that. So I recommend earlier the better. That way you have it out of the way, but it needs to be submitted prior to going to the CFA or we can't let you move forward. So if not, when you are submitting your plans, you can submit it after your plans are approved. That's also okay.
Okay. And one more kind of follow-up on the plat situation. So the final plat is held for moving forward by the IPRC and the CFA, basically waiting for those to be accepted and approved. What happens to the final plat during that time, and how do you start it back into the House bill process?
Well, so you will submit your plat separately through that process. And so your plat will be going over reviews during that time. As long as it's submitted for their review, you can continue through your IPRC, and they run together. What holds the final plat typically is the CFA. So once that CFA is accepted, you can move forward with an approval of the plat. It's not held by the construction of the infrastructure itself.
Thank you.
Oh, yes, completion agreement is separate. So if you do use a completion agreement as your financial guarantee, your plat is held. That's how those work.
Thank you. Can you talk a little bit about what's needed for qualifying a contractor and about, on average, how long that process takes?
So I can make sure we get that information to you, but it all depends on the contractor and what you are trying to get pre-qualified. So development services, we don't pre-qualify contractors. That's either done by TPW or the water group. And in both cases, they have that information on our project resources, which is called eBuilder. And it goes through the applications and the conditions to meet those in the review period. I do not know offhand how long it takes.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Sorry.
Good afternoon. One of your slides referenced a developer pause time or requesting to pause the time. I'm not really clear on the context of that, like pausing time for what, and what are the charges on the work days? Can you just explain that?
Sure. So if we kind of look back on the CFA, we talked about the inspection fees, right? And that is for our inspectors to go out and inspect the traffic control, the SWIPs, the project as a whole, making sure that everything is moving forward as it needs to. And as far as our inspectors are concerned, every day, which is not included as a non-working weekend or a weather day, is considered a working day, whether there are people out there working or not. So there have been situations where, again, the project on the public side moves forward ahead of the private. And so if we went and poured these entrances, if we went and did this landscape, if we went and added these sidewalks, when you have heavy machinery coming in and out, when you're doing demolition, when you're building, those items could get destroyed. And we don't want anybody to have to do work twice. And so that's where the idea of this pause time came in, so that our public infrastructure and private infrastructure could meet up. We'd make sure everything is to a degree that we could approve both sides and then restart the work on the public to finish out those items in the parkway.
So there's essentially charges if the timing doesn't line up with the coordination of the public infrastructure. Is that what the,
Yeah, so as long as the project is, the public infrastructure, there's still items pending. There hasn't been a final inspection. There are still time being charged because our inspectors still have to go out, check the traffic control, check the SWIP items, all of that has to be checked daily. So they're charging time.
Is there a limit on the time loss?
I don't know that there's a limit. I think it would just depend on so when you fill out that form, you have to have an explanation of the time that's you need required.
Could you explain the difference between a quantity takeoff matrix and a bid tab?
Yeah, so a quantity takeoff matrix is really going through your plans and essentially saying on page 1, I have this much amount of pipe, many hydrants, and you're breaking it out by quantity, not by cost, but quantity of your pages. So it's making sure that when we look at that bid, it matches your plans and everything gets tied back together. So it's breaking it out by page. Any other questions? Y'all are keeping me on my toes. All right. Well, thank y'all so much.
Thanks, Drew. So 2 things. First, not only is Drew an exceptional engineer, but he really understands the process. And I wanted to emphasize the checklist that he spoke about. He just launched that maybe 3 weeks ago. This is an excellent tool for you to use as you build out your project plan. He not only tells you what you need for your submittals, but he gives you time frames for the city. So he gives you the number of days it's going to take for the city to do each step. And so that's critical to your project plan, right? As you define that plan and when you want to go to construction. So I encourage you to take a look at the checklist, and I will send you the link when I send you the email for the presentation. So I just wanted to emphasize that. So we are going to move forward now with our small-scale infrastructure program, and that's going to be Jenna Henderson and team. So let me, here she is, Miss Jenna.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jenna Henderson, and I am the program manager for the Small Scale Infrastructure Program, which is specifically designed for infill developments. And since its inception last April, we have been changing the customer journey for developers in the city of Fort Worth. We're going to talk about that today. Joining me are 2 members of the Small Scale Infrastructure team, so I'll let them introduce themselves.
So I'm Evelyn Roberts, and my role in the SIP is the Contract Service Administrator.
And my name is Alex Bazilla. I'm a graduate engineer with the SIP program.
Thank you. In addition to the members joining me today, our team includes consultants, inspectors, and contractors, all of which are committed to providing resources to enhance development, specifically for small-scale developers, and prioritize infill development, which we know is vital to our urban core. So a picture here is from our groundbreaking event last October when we went live with the small-scale infrastructure program. Featured on the screen is some of our city leadership, a consultant engineering firm that we partnered with, BHB, Bean, who does our construction for our lighting, and together, we deliver a process we describe as SIPify and simplify. And what that means is that if a developer is looking for a streamlined, simplified approach to development, they can partner with the Small Scale Infrastructure Program, and we will aid and assist them in the design, development, and construction of their community facilities. And this can save them time and money and just improve their overall development experience. So when we went live in April, we changed the customer journey through the development process. And what I mean by that is really shown on this slide. So in the left-hand part of this, you see a traditional development experience process where you design and oversee the construction, right? It includes a consultant engineer producing a set of plans, going through the IPRC process, which you just heard about, culminating in a community facilities agreement. When we went live with our program, we created a unique ecosystem where a developer could choose the experience that works best for them. What I mean by that is kind of shown in the middle of the screen, which I'm calling a pick your process, where the developer can choose to have the city lead the design and construction initiative for their small scale development. So how it best works right now is if there are water and sewer or wet utilities, the developer goes and can pull a water miscellaneous projects permit and then come to SIP for the flat work and also the lighting components on the project. So you can see there's a lot of different mechanisms in development services. So again, just to highlight this, there's a mechanism called water miscellaneous projects. They design and construct the wet utilities. Currently, a developer can come to SIP and will design and construct the streetlights and the flat work. In addition to this, some developers are actually choosing to pull a parkway permit and oversee the design and construction themselves for the flat work components. So there's a lot of mechanisms right now for small scale developers, and I think we're going to have a different Development 101 to describe in greater detail how the customer journey changes for different types of developers, but just highlighting how you could pick right now to partner with the SIP program. And so I can answer any questions on that later if I didn't elaborate on that clearly enough. In the future, we endeavor to be a one-stop shop or a holistic offering for the development community. What I mean by that is that a developer can come to us and we'll design and install the wet utilities, the flat work, the lighting, really providing them a holistic experience and really delivering that simplified approach to development. So imagine if you have a small infill property and you could just come to SIP and we would do the design and construction, how great that approach would be. You wouldn't have to find your own bonded contractors. You wouldn't have to put up a financial guarantee. It's a much shorter process because you pay in full and your building permit can be pulled after payment is received. We'll be elaborating on, how our project works in a little bit, but I'm just trying to describe what it is. A part of what we are is what we can install, and currently our offerings include streetlights, pedestrian lights. Our project limits are 800 linear feet of these. We can also do alleys, driveway aprons, flat work, and sidewalk. Currently, we are the only option in development services for solar infrastructure, so we've been designing solar streetlights, pedestrian lights, and we can also install school flasher and pedestrian beacons. Again, what's kind of unique about our process is that we are flexible. We're looking to enhance the development experience for developers. So if you are interested in installing solar, pedestrian, or street lights, you can go through the IPRC process, pull that infrastructure category off that plan set, come to SIP, and we'll design and construct it. You can also pull traditional grid lighting from your IPRC plan set and come to SIP. We've had a developer do that because our contract prices are a little better than what the developer could find in the open market. In the future, we are going to offer the wet utilities. We're still working through the exact limits of that offering, but we think it'll be sewer as well as wet utilities up to 3 inches. We're going to be moving forward with that in a couple of months, so stay tuned and look for marketing on those exact program limits. So a little bit more about our solar lighting. This is an infill developer that it was in an MUUR district. So when we went live with the program, we identified that our largest market was an MUUR, mixed-use urban residential area. A lot of the properties there were originally zoned single-family residential. They had back-of-lot overhead electric. So we were able to offer this solar offering to this client. And you can see that we saved them 46% on their construction costs. So the value proposition for solar lighting is that traditional grid lighting for this development would have cost $63,000. We were able to, we're actually under contract as of today for a 46% price reduction. So the other unique thing that we do that is different than other mechanisms in development is we group multiple projects together. So this was actually 5 lots. If this applicant went to water miscellaneous projects, that would be 5 different applications, right? Or they were doing taps by separate, by instrument or ordinance, that would be multiple applications. We're willing to just work with the developer, so we allowed them to group multiple lots together and benefit from economies of scale. So overall, this was one construction cost, one engineering cost, but they ended up grouping one more lot on the other side of, on a street nearby that just didn't fit this graphical representation. But what I want to highlight is we are willing to look and group multiple projects together because that can save you time and money as well. So right now we're doing solar lighting that is only offered through the small scale infrastructure program. So if you are interested in working with us on that, just let us know. And I know that I've presented a lot of content today, and this is a unique program. So before I turn it over to Alex, we've developed some questions that you can ask yourself to determine if SIP is the right program for you. So some questions you can ask yourself. Am I looking for convenience and time savings? Do I want a team of experts to oversee my construction, or am I the expert? In the past, has it been challenging for me to secure bonded contractors? And do I have the time constraints or the time for a CFA? And am I looking for cost savings? Again, SIP is a turnkey solution. We offer full design and construction services. And Alex is going to go into greater detail about what that is.
All right, thanks for the introduction, Jenna. Here are the answers. Alrighty. So to answer the first question where we're asking for convenience, the SIP program is designed to be a one-stop shop in which you come to the city with your project, with the problem that you need solved, and you kind of leave it in our hands. Basically what we'll do is we'll take a look at the project, we'll determine if it's applicable for the program, and then we'll hand it off to our design engineer to go ahead and come up with a proposal that we then give to the client for them to approve. Now, this engineer that we work with has experience working with the city of Fort Worth in the past, and they have produced quality deliverables. So to answer that second question, yes, you are being supervised by a team of experts, both in the city and both in the engineering sector. All SIP contractors are bonded, so you don't have to worry about waiting for your contractor to be approval. They're already cleared to work in the city. And then, there's more stuff here. And then this SIP process is expedited. The big thing is that there are time savings. So you could go through an express CFA process, but we like to emphasize that the SIP program is a bit faster than that process. And then finally, we would also like to emphasize the cost savings. The SIP program has flat fees. There's a flat application fee, a flat plan review fee per sheet, and there's also a fee for, I believe, the engineering services and the construction services. Now, the construction services is a flat fee as well. So how do they find us? We do have a public emailing list that's on the City of Fort Worth's website, which you can find right there. And we have had the engineer of record for an IPRC reach out to us directly to take advantage of our services. So typically what happens is that the designer or the applicant doesn't have the capabilities to do the grid lighting or the solar lighting. So instead they'll be directed to SIP to do that. And then finally, whenever they apply for a PDC or an IPRC, they might have a hold. And if they're directed to SIP, they can actually pay the application fee and get that hold lifted if they install lights through the SIP. All right, now we're going to go into the process. So we have it broken down into 5 phases. The first one being feasibility, proposal, design, construction, and closeout. Now the process begins with feasibility. So typically the developer or another party that represents them will meet with us to discuss their needs. Now when we meet with them, we like to make sure that the program is applicable. There are certain things that might exclude them from the program, such as working with the TxDOT right away, certain utility requirements, and other multi-jurisdictional collaborations. I can go into more detail on that later. But then if the developer meets our criteria and they want to work with us, they will pay our application fee, which I would like to disclose is non-refundable. Just wanted to put that out there. And then the SIP PM will prepare a preliminary engineering report to help them out. Basically, what we like to do at the city is to do all the due diligence so that whenever we hand off the work to the engineer, they have all the information they need to kind of give them that solution in a turnkey manner. Then finally, the engineer prepares the proposal for the developer, and then once we hand off the proposal to the developer and they approve of it, we go on to design. So the developer will pay in full for the engineering services. That's one thing I would like to highlight. So they have a one-time payment, and then they're in the hands of SIP. So the engineer that we work with will work on the design, and then the city, the SIP PM, will work on reviewing the submittals just to make sure they're of the highest quality, that they adhere to all standards that the city imposes. Then finally, once the design is complete, the SIP will confirm the construction date with the contractor. And then we go on to construction. So we like to host a pre-construction meeting, usually 2 weeks before construction begins, just to kind of iron everything out and go over the site conditions. And then we at the city, we work with our contractor to verify all receipt of all submittals. And we also attend a final walkthrough just to make sure everything is all good, that there are no action items. So really, we kind of oversee the contractor as we work through construction, just to ensure that everything is adhering to the design that was submitted. And then finally, once the construction is complete, we close the project out and it's handed over to the developer just to make sure they like it. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Evelyn so she can discuss the fees.
Thanks, Alex. So just like Alex reminded us, the application fee is non-refundable. Generally, the application fee is collected at the time that the SIP application comes through, and we receive that through Acela, through the Citizen Access Portal, just like you submit most of your other permits, and that's done at the feasibility stage. So then once the project goes through our proposal stage, the proposal will include a construction management fee of $1,500, the plan review fee of $435.37 per engineering sheet. That's the sheets that the PM comes back and reviews. And typically right now we've seen about 3 sheets per project, so that's how we calculate that fee. And then the engineering design and the construction cost varies per project, and that's all detailed and outlined. It's a very detailed proposal that gives you the cost for that. So agreements. Everybody's familiar with when you go through IPRC process, there's all these other agreements that have to be typically executed, and, they sometimes depend, on a review of that IPRC project. With SIP, it's a lot simpler, and the first agreement that we execute is our engineering task order. And that engineering task order happens just soon after the proposal stage and once we've received our fees that we've invoiced. And then we do a hold harmless agreement if the client decides to use their own survey. That is an advantage because a lot of times these projects already have surveys in place, and so we just execute an extra agreement for that. And then we move on to our owner contract. That once the design is complete, we execute with the owner. And remember that there is no financial guarantee because everything is already bonded with our contractor. And then our last agreement to get us to construction is our construction task order. And that's executed soon after we've executed the owner contract. And just like with most agreements that you execute through our contract management office, it's pretty simple. We just ask for a signature authority letter. We just want to know who we're going to enter into contract with.
So that's what our program is and how it works. Again, it's meant to be a simplified approach to development specifically for small-scale developers, improving infill development, which is vital to our urban core. We really streamline the approach. There's very few customer touch points. So those occur, again, just to summarize, at the beginning, at the application stage, when the application fee is paid. We then send a proposal. The proposal includes full design and construction cost. So that's another customer touch point. They pay in full. We then oversee all elements of design and construction. So at the end of design, after we've worked with all of our internal peers to make sure that the plans produced by our consultant engineer are ready for construction, we do send it to the developer. We want them to sign off on that, right? And then we go into construction. When we go into construction, we work with the developers, other contractors, and we make sure that we're scheduling our construction in accordance with their timeline. So that doesn't necessarily mean that we can always just run right out and start construction. We want to make sure that we're fitting into the master schedule. So that is another touch point, just that coordination item. We also invite them to the pre-con meeting and for the final walkthrough. And then at the end of the construction project, we refund any unused construction contingency. So can I answer any questions today? Okay, well, oh, sir?
Yeah, when are y'all taking on drainage?
Yeah. You know, drainage is an interesting thing. What is really great about the infill projects that we are doing right now is they're less than an acre, and in the city of Fort Worth, different from other cities. If you have a site that's less than an acre, you don't have to have a flood study. So that's why we have set our limits at 1 acre. Anything that involves drainage, downstream assessments, that's typically not, that typically requires a more robust plan review process, and those are best suited right now for the IPRC. Now, when we have our contractor for wet utilities, what we could look at, you know, if there was a conflict with an inlet or something of that nature, we probably might have the capacity to make some small adjustments. But the program in itself is really not intended for drainage because that involves multi-jurisdictional agencies, FEMA's, you know, floodplain management, LOMARS, grading, those things. Our ideal market is really infill development. So they're developers that, you know, a lot of times there is existing infrastructure there. It's in an area that has already been configured with a coefficient of runoff that is, you know, existing development. So it's not greenfield development, it's infill development. And so the existing drainage has the capacity for the development because it's already been considered at full development. Does that kind of explain it? Okay. Any other questions?
What is y'all's typical feasibility and proposal timeline?
We aim for 2 weeks. Now, when so we try to be flexible, and what I mean by that is we take on unique needs. So unlike other programs which have really robust criteria at the front end, we're willing to come up with custom tailored solutions. One of our solutions is the solar, right? And so because we were piloting that in the city, the proposal period took a little bit longer because we didn't have city standards or specifications. Ideally, we try to return a proposal in 2 weeks. So you pay the application fee. In 2 weeks, you get a preliminary engineering report. You get the full cost of an engineering proposal, and you get an OPCC. So you get the opinion of probable construction cost in 2 weeks. Now, if you know, I'm an engineer, and when I was in the private market for basically $1,700, if I could take a full construction cost in 2 weeks, if I could take that to my developer, you know, there's a lot of value there because it's really eliminating the risk and uncertainty with the development process. So, I mean, for $1,700, I think it's a great value proposition to just come to the city and see what those expected construction costs are. And I think that's one of the biggest values of our program. Now, when I was an engineer in the private market, I could take a proposal like that and go to a contractor and negotiate on behalf of my developer. So that's another type of a value proposition too. Of course, we don't want you to do that. We want you to come to SSIP and allow us to install the infrastructures for you. And what we have seen is that we have been competitive with traditional grid lighting. As I mentioned, we just had an applicant pull their infrastructure from the IPRC and come to us. So to answer your question, we try to return proposals in 2 weeks. Yeah. So a lot of people ask us, like, what's different between the Express CFA and SSIP? And the city timeline is really comparable. I mean, ours is 17 days, theirs is 38 days. Well, if a year-long construction project, you know, a week difference is not really that big of a value proposition. But what's unique about our program is we clear the infrastructure holds off of the building permit within a couple weeks. So if our proposal takes 2 weeks, we invoice and your developer pays in full, then the building permit is cleared within 17 days. So we actually have a client right now, our solar light project. They paid in full for the solar lights back in, December, and then they went right into construction. So we weren't holding them back or delaying them in any way. And what we've actually found, which might not be intuitive for people who are well-versed in development, is it's not city timelines that delay projects. Sometimes it's the coordination that the developer has to do outside of city processes, like selecting a contractor. So if you're a small-scale developer, it might be hard to go find a pre-qualified contractor. And in fact, that's one of the components we believe actually extends the Express CFA timeline beyond what we've counted here as 38 days of city timeline. The other thing is the financial guarantee. So in the Express CFA process, after the routing of the cover sheet, the developer has to go find a contractor. So they're looking around all these pre-qualified contractors, trying to get a good pricing. Well, we already have one lined up. And then after the CFA prep package, they have to procure a financial guarantee, which takes some time as well. So I hope this is helpful too in demonstrating the difference between our process and an Express CFA. I don't know if, I know you asked about the proposal, but, okay. Any other questions? Well, can we ask a question of you? So we are a new program. How many of you have heard of us before? You have heard about us, okay. And then what are the main limitations? Like what's holding you back from using our services? You just haven't had a project or, yeah, okay. So again, for our projects, anything less than an acre, we try to stay out of the floodplain, but if we're putting in like solar lights or traditional grid lighting, that wouldn't be a problem for us. The floodplain really becomes a problem when pertaining to anything with grading. We won't be doing work where there are cast iron water lines. So those will always be Express CFA projects or IPRC projects, right? If there's a cast iron water line or if there's city cost participation. Other than that, we try to stay away from TxDOT right away, but we don't have that many limitations, and we are willing to kind of work uniquely within development services to provide custom solutions, because ultimately we want to enhance the development experience and prioritize infill development, which is vital to our urban core. So please give us a call or email us anytime if you have any questions. Thanks.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Candace Merrick, and I lead the contract management team. I would like to introduce my team. dedicated. They're a very dedicated team. They work very hard to get contracts out. It is a team of 7. I have 2 senior contract compliance specialists, and they manage the CFAs. I have contract compliance specialists, Wendy Beardsley and Sidney. They handle encroachments, maintenance agreements, and the unified sign agreements. And then I have our land agents that actually manage all of easements. All right.
Can you hold your microphone so we can hear you better?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. So we have 6 contracts that you guys may encounter as you go through your process for development. And that is the community facility agreement, your easements, encroachments, maintenance agreement, stormwater, facility maintenance agreements, and your unified sign agreements. So here is a roadmap that actually shows our approval process. Everything we do goes through a process with all the departments for clearing. So as you're seeing, this is from start to finish of when we receive the application up into execution. So let's talk about what types of contracts you guys may encounter. So the CFA is a community facility agreement, and this is a secured developer-funded agreement that requires a financial guarantee. It also has an application fee, and you do have to obtain your financial guarantee with a bond, a cash deposit, or a letter of credit. So if your project needs maybe abandoning, dedication, or vacation by separate instrument, you'll more than likely need an easement. It may be for public access, maybe for an outlet for emergency vehicles to get into. This also requires an application fee, and you'll need a warranty deed as well. If you are looking to install maybe benches, a fountain, or maybe a flower box, that is called for encroaching, and you would need an encroachment agreement if it's anything that's within the city's right-of-way. This also has an application fee, and also it's recorded. Maintenance agreements. So if you are looking to install streetscapes or maybe some type of decorative lights, then you'll need a maintenance agreement. An application is needed. There is no application fee. A warranty deed is also needed as well. If you have construction and at some point storm water is not draining off well, you may need a SWIFT, that's what we actually call it. You more than likely install drain channels, or a detention pond will be needed to be able to redirect the storm water flows. And this also is an application, and design plans are needed as well. And here, if you, as you see going along the highways, you usually see shopping centers, the signs for you to go to select stores. This is our unified signs agreements. If you are in a multiple business complex that has a single sign, you would need to apply for a unified sign agreement. And there is an application fee, and also you would need to present a warranty deed. So how do you connect with us? So we do have our contract management page with the City of Fort Worth. We have made it really durable for you guys to be able to go through each agreement that we actually have, to be able to see the agreements that actually are typed up. These are just for reference, but they do give you an idea of what the agreement would look like and be as you are going through the development process. And we're just a click of a button. Any questions?
All right, that concludes our workshop. Thank you so much for coming and your patience with our elevators, and we ran a little long. My next step, I'll be sending I have your email addresses when you registered, so I'll send the PowerPoint, some links, and then when the video's ready, I'll send that out as well. Don't forget my survey. Let me know what you'd like to see for future workshops. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much. See you next time.